Good day and welcome to this intro video on schemas. Within this video, we'll be covering what a schema is and taking a look at a simple example. A schema is a JSON structure that can represent something. For example, a piece of UI, a process or series of steps to be executed, or 3D graphics within a scene and how that scene is configured. A schema is a JSON representation of something that will be inflated or used to create what is defined within that schema. So, initially, we're going to be looking at schemas that can be used to render pieces of UI, which we'll refer to as UI schemas. So let's take a look at an example of a simple UI schema and start to unpack how it goes from being a JSON structure to actually rendering as UI on a web page. So here is a starter application I'm using for the purposes of this demo, and the current view we're looking at has been rendered via a UI schema. So if I open up my dev tools here and just get a handle on this div, all of these elements within this div have been rendered via the schema. So this H2, for example, this input container with these labels and inputs, this paragraph, this unordered list with list items, as well as these links. And these inputs, or this page, is fully interactable, right? So, this text input, I can interact with it. Same with this number input, same with this color input, for example, as well as these links. And all of this has been defined via a UI schema. So let's take a look at the schema behind this view. So if I jump here quickly to my WebStorm. Right, so here is an example of what a UI schema looks like. So I've defined it within a JSON or a JavaScript file just for the ease of importing it within my view. But you can define this within a JSON file as well. So going through the parts that make up the schema, we obviously have this body element or body object, which contains an elements array. And within this elements array, you'll see that these were all of the elements that I showed you on the screen here. Right? We've got this H2 element with content that has basic form in it. There's our div with the class input container. So this div here, which contains this div, which contains our labels and inputs. And then here, this div has an elements array, which then contains, like I say, those labels, and then the various inputs. So this text input, this number input, and the color input, right? And then further on down the way, we've got another H2, for example, the paragraph that I mentioned, the unordered list with list items, as well as those two links, as well with their own attributes linking to web pages and setting a target. So this is just a very basic schema, but we'll obviously dive into the details of these elements and these components and look at a UI schema in greater detail moving forward. But this is just an idea of what a UI schema can look like. So when we want to render the schema, we'll use a defined parser that will walk through the schema and begin parsing all of these schema items into the associated HTML. But as I say, to conclude, it is important to remember that a schema is essentially just a JSON structure that represents something, be it a piece of UI, a process of steps, etc., which will be inflated and used later. So they are best utilized when trying to build a dynamic and customizable application. Right, so moving forward, we'll jump into further detail of working with schema items, how the parser and custom providers can be defined in order to parse your own custom components, as well as working with data and hooking in other technologies. Thanks for watching this demo.